everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Rise Up, Voices from the Frontlines. I am your host, Krista Fee, and today I'm bringing an amazing guest who is a retired master sergeant in the Army, retired from the police department, and works in tactical and operational training development in active shooter. So please welcome to the show, Scott Hyderkhan. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Krista. How you doing?
I am so good. I'm really excited to have this conversation today because we're kind of announcing something that I have not announced to my audience or to my followers at all. So nobody knows about the project other than you and I, at least from my social media perspective. So this is the first time that we'll be talking about this in my universe here. So I always love to go backwards a little bit and to ask my guests a little bit about your childhood. What got you into doing what you're doing? Tell us a little bit about little Scott.
Okay. Well, I didn't know we were going to go there, but hey. So, I gravitated towards military because my dad brought us up that way, and he introduced me to things such as U.S. Army Rangers during World War II, Mills Marauders, and things of that nature. So, when I was growing up, going through school, I decided that's what I was going to do, and so my idea was I would join the Rangers when I got out of high school, and that's what I did, and went into the Ranger Regiment. Well, it wasn't a regiment at the time; it was 2 battalions. Then it became a regiment when I was there a couple of years later. But anyway, went to the Rangers, became a regiment, spent 20 years as a Ranger in the U.S. Army. A bulk of that in the 75th Ranger Regiment, and so that's what brought me into that. And then later on, when I became a police officer, when I was getting ready to retire, I decided, okay, so I need to retire. I didn't want to really retire, but I was still young. I got to decide to retire now or go to 30 instead of 20. And I go, well, I should get out now and find another job because I was just a high school grad. So I get out, become a cop because it was an easy transition from military to being a police officer. And I started doing that. And that's the story. And I kind of gravitated to the active shooter piece because it's kind of a mix of law enforcement and military. And so I was able to parlay my military experience into the law enforcement side, which helped out in that. It's not the same, but there's some pieces that you can take out of it and use, and that's what I've done over the last since about 2008. While I was an officer, I started working on active shooter and really dedicated a lot of my time to that.
It is fascinating. It's a much bigger topic than most people think about. And a lot of the content that's available on active shooter comes from just a limited law enforcement perspective. And when you approach active shooter from a community perspective and from a tactical military perspective and from an emergency rescue perspective, and when you look at it from all these different viewpoints, it becomes a multi-layered, multifaceted, much more complex, but much more simple process to educate the community on. So I was super excited when I met you because I like to look at it from more of a community perspective and from more of a mental health and psychological perspective. And you are such a strong tactician that having your viewpoint and my viewpoint together creates a really full, broad picture that we don't get to see very often. So what is it about active shooter that that you're passionate about? Like, why this topic?
Because it's such a complex issue. And so when you see it, and I started this out, and when I first started, I go, okay, it's a tactical problem. Then I started identifying as it went by, I go, okay, we can fix this tactically. But the reality is, and this is the reality, we could muddle through tactically problems that occur. We could get to a solution. It may take a little while. It may not be the optimum, but tactically, it's not as important as it is operationally. And so I started looking at it operational wise. How do all these pieces fit together in a law enforcement and fire? And I started looking at that aspect. So when you start looking at that, you start going, okay, why aren't these meshing? Why isn't this meshing? Why are we operating the way we're operating? And what can we do better at doing it? Then I realized, as you see these events unfold, you realize the real problem, and it's a community issue. It's not just a fire, police. It's not just a tactical issue. It's an operational issue with fire, police, civilian emergency medical, hospitals tied in, the reunification piece, the prevention piece, the schools, the houses of worship, everybody that's involved in this, they all get affected. And so there has to be a kumbaya of sorts where we go, okay, we need to look at this from a regional perspective. And so regionally speaking, if you look at these things and you say, okay, we can look at the Gilmore Garlic Festival shooting in Gilroy, California. And we look at the high school in St. Louis, the Fine Arts High School that occurred. Those two shootings are actually interesting shootings because they went, I don't want to say they went well, okay, because that's not the right term, but they had optimum outcomes for a shooting like that. Okay. And what did they have in common? Well, a couple of things they had in common. One, the guys that responded to it, they were acquainted with one another, so they would work together. At Gilroy, the fire units were already on station because it was a festival there. So you had all these coordinations already in place. The St. Louis, those officers worked together. They all worked together. Okay. Tactically, they were able to nick it in the butt right away so that it didn't grow. And when I say grow, if you look at Las Vegas shooting on a strip, it got big fast, right? Because it was a big venue. So it got big fast. You look at the Uvalde Robb Elementary School shooting, it got big, slower, but it got big. And assets were coming in from everywhere. And so you had all these assets coming in to do good things, right? But all these assets, helicopters for emergency to haul out medically, wheeled vehicles, ambulances, everybody that comes in, but they're not being managed. Okay. So what we're seeing is, from a regional standpoint, when these things get big and we don't recognize them because we've never been in those before and we don't understand how to manage those, that's the problem. Not when they're small, not when they're tactically. If we can tactically muddle through it, we can fix it right away. If we can fix it right away, it doesn't become a big problem. When it becomes a big problem, it becomes unmanageable because we don't work together as a community on these things. We need to regionalize as a community. And so it's a layered effect of prevention, starting out with resiliency building at the schools, at our workplace, at our hospitals, everywhere. And trying to prevent these things from occurring and catching them beforehand and getting people help so that we have less of those, and then so on and down the road. So you have prevention and you have response, but really those two intermesh, because we can have prevention all the way through to the beginning of these things in a multiple ways of doing it. But we have to look at it differently. And so I've talked so much, I'll let you get in here. Sorry about that.
No, it's perfect. This is why you and I get along so well, because like my program's focus is that prevention, resilience, response, and recovery, all 4 pieces. And all 4 pieces, for me, it's with equal attention, because really, if we start at the beginning, if we actually create resilient kids, if we actually create an environment where kids can solve their problems effectively with each other, we literally create fewer active shooters. We create fewer incidents that are going to end in this way, because what causes active shooter scenarios most often in schools? It's kids that don't feel accepted, kids that don't feel seen, heard, and understood, kids that can't express themselves freely and solve problems with other kids. It's relational problems, it's relational dynamics. So if we can solve those relational dynamics and give kids the tools and resources to be empowered to solve their own problems, to have conflict in a safe way, to have conflict and resolve conflict and still be able to communicate openly and feel like they've been seen, heard, and understood, then we reduce this problem from the ground up. And then we practice and we create these scenarios and we do all the things that are talked about in the program. All of these things come together with the connection and the coordination and the tactics and the strategies. And we solve it fast. Like you just said, we solve it fast when it happens. The best possible outcomes in the worst possible situations. Right? And then we start the recovery process, and we can't forget about the recovery process. And so often it's dropped a couple weeks after an incident, and we don't even know what recovery process is needed until, 3 months later, when kids are still struggling, when parents are still struggling, when communities are looking for resources that don't exist. So.
And those things need to be in place before anything ever happens, right? I mean,
right.
Our reunification operation is something that needs to be set up and designed to recover as soon as they get to that reunification site. That recovery begins then, right? I mean, it doesn't wait for everything to be done. It starts right away. It starts right away with the first people that have contact with those folks that were involved, the victims that were involved in that event, because they're all victims. If they got exposed to that event, and quite honestly, it has tentacles, because everyone that's related to them, everyone that was affected, friends, even families, even friends, they're affected.
Yes.
They're psychologically affected by the event, and they're not used to that sort of trauma. And
right.
So they're very much victims in this. So it's a very large victim pool at the end of one of these things, and the bigger they are, the bigger that pool is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Entire communities are traumatized by these situations, and we don't really think about it that way. The first 24 hours after an incident, what happens psychologically, how things are debriefed, how free people feel to talk about what happened, all of those things impact the results that we see 3, 6, 12 months later. Like literally those first 24 hours are really crucial to how people are, whether they're effectively handling the trauma or whether they're effectively processing the trauma or whether they end up with post-traumatic stress symptoms, right? We know that debrief works when it's done correctly. Statistically, we can see that the results are different when a proper debrief happens immediately, but it has to happen really soon after the incident. And oftentimes we wait a week, or I can't tell you how many responses I've gone to, and they say we have psychological staff on standby.
Yeah.
Psychological staff should never be on standby. They should be at the reunification position working immediately. They should be working as kids are coming in. They should be working as parents are coming in. They should be talking to everybody, keeping the conversation going, asking people what they experienced, asking people what they saw, asking people what they're feeling. Because if we're not talking about it, we're not healing from it. And they need to be talking about it immediately.
Yes, because there's an investigation piece of this, and they're going to be piecing that together. And they're not going to wait to start piecing that together. They're going to try to get information right away that while it's still in the victims' heads. They're not going to let it get old. Okay, so that means that stuff's going to be coming out, and they need to have the ability to get help on the psychological side of the house on recovery right away, because it's all going to be getting stirred up immediately.
Yes.
So there's a lot to recovery, and I think that the deeper these things go, I mean, if you look at it, and I mean, think about some of the stories and some of the things that people don't really realize about the folks that are actually working these scenes, the coroners, because everyone expects, well, that's a coroner's job and that's what they do. Well, not really. There's levels of exposure that coroners had, and they may not have that exposure to that much trauma, that much injury. I mean, they probably see car accidents and things of that nature. That's a one-on-one, but to have, I mean, not to get graphic or anything, but when children are brought in and you have a shooting in a classroom and they're point blank shots, and you hear they're doing identification with dental records, that tells you something.
Yes.
And so people need to understand that those people, though they be professionals, are going to have trauma. They need help too.
Oh, absolutely. And when I do a lot of post-traumatic stress work, and we call it post-traumatic and occupational stress, because we're talking about these first responders, and it's not always diagnosable post-traumatic stress disorder, right? They have symptoms. They're having the exposure to these traumas is affecting their lives, right? So the thing I hear the most is the cases that get to them, the cases they can't get out of their dreams, the cases that they can't forget, the moments that are stuck forever in their minds are cases with kids. It could be a car accident, it could be something, it could be an abuse case, whatever. But the cases with kids hit the hardest. Why? Because first responders are parents, they're husbands and wives, they're humans. And so many of them go home to a 7 or 8 year old kid that's their own, and they see their child in the kids that they had to put in a body bag, that they had to send to the hospital, knowing that wasn't, they weren't going to get to the hospital. They already know the outcome, because I've seen it so many times before. They already know there's no chance, no hope, no help, right? They know it. So in a moment when they feel like, could I have done something differently? Could I have done something better? Could we have caught this ahead of time, right? Our first responders are affected by this just as much as the parents in the community. And I do agree, we definitely need to take that into consideration. That's why we say that these things affect communities. The entire community is traumatized by this, all at varying degrees, because trust is broken. Yep. Parents get scared to send their kids to school. Parents don't trust that the responders are going to be there fast enough or do the right thing, because some of the kids didn't make it, right? But what could they do differently? We are not at this point yet, and we're working on that. We are not yet universally trained consistently, regularly, and with attention to all of these details. We're just not there yet. No system has been put into place that's universally understood to be a good way to do it.
And the reality, it sounds like a lot of hard work. It's just detailed work. So yes, it's hard, but the reality is we have pieces in place already. Those pieces are already there. It just needs to be planned out that these folks are on scene, that this is part of reunification. So if we include it as part of the reunification, it's really not that hard because those people already exist. They work at hospitals. They're there every night at hospitals, right? We have them there. So why is it that we think that we wouldn't have them at the reunification site? And I think a lot of it has to do with they want to get through the immediate issues at hand, the big picture stuff.
Right.
We have to get people fixed medically, and we have to get an investigation started. We have to have public information operation, which I think is part of recovery too. I mean, that's part of the whole piece too.
Yes.
How much information you give out? Is it accurate information? Is it because you can be open book, but if you're putting out erroneous information, it's harmful, right?
Right.
It can do harm. So the PIO operation is a big part of it. And again, this all plays into recovery because the community is going to recover together.
Yes.
And we see them, the community suffers together. You see that going on in Uvalde right now. The level of angst that's going on. My dad always said an interesting thing when I was growing up. He says, Americans love, he was from overseas. So he goes, Americans love to point the finger and figure out who's to blame for whatever's going on wrong. And it's so true. We like to point out, hey, who's responsible for this?
Right.
And the reality is we're all responsible.
Right. And we're often hesitant to be solution focused, right? Because, it's hard and it costs money and we have to create all these programs and we have to assess all these programs and we have to continually grow and change, which means we have to continually invest. Yeah. And we have to observe and then we have to shift and we have to do it again. Like it's an ongoing process of this is good, but can we do better? And we don't like to do that. We like to put a system in place and go, there's a system for that. Let's move on to the next system.
Yeah. And reality is there's some detailed work in this, but if you look at it and you plan from a principled piece of what I always say is if it's not broken, don't fix it. If you have solutions already there, just modify it a little bit and put that in place and put that in there. You can also start with short-term solutions with a long-term fix in mind and implement that as you go. And you may not get to that right away. It may be 10 years down the road that you finally walk in. But this temporary solution fits and it works. It'll carry us through till we get to that point, we can implement a long-term solution. So I try to look at it from perspective of there's this grandiose idea of how we should do it, and then there's reality down here, and then somewhere in the middle we have a result we can move towards, and then get to that and keep working towards Shangri-La, right? So right. Anyway,
I like the framework principle. I look at it as we're developing a framework, and every single community's got different needs. Every single building is different. Every single staff is different. Every single student body is different. So there's not one size fits all solution to active shooter problems, right? We're talking grocery stores, we're talking parking lots, we're talking festivals, we're talking hospitals, we're talking churches, we're talking total different building design, total different spatial properties, resources are different, right? Yeah. So when we comment this and we say we have a solution, we're not saying we have a one size fits all, this is how we're going to do it. what we're saying is there's a framework that if you put all of the pieces in place the best that you can at your location with your staff and your resources, if you focus your attention on all of these pieces and you implement based on the whole picture, that you're going to get the best possible outcomes in the worst possible situations.
Yep. Framework, template, whatever you want to call it, you have those things in place. You have a system in place that now you can now put the attention of detailed, the infrastructure detail, the personnel detail. You know, hospitals are different than houses of worship. Houses of worship are different than schools. And then internally, like you said, the buildings are different. The size of them, how many people you're dealing with, they're all different. But everybody can use a template to basically and a procedure to get to where they need to get. But they have to put the work in that is at their local, at that local level. And
that is why consulting is important. That is why consulting services exist.
And responders can deal with, if everybody's doing the same framework of things, responders can have a framework of how they respond. And they know that when they respond to these are where these folks are working in a general framework. And this is what we can expect. It may not be exactly the same, but it's going to be close. And I think you look at it and how you can never plan out, and you'll never be able to guess what the next shooting is going to look like. Every time you turn around, it's something new. You know, the Las Vegas Strip, a shooting. It was a big shooting. How do you handle one of those? And how do you get all those pieces to work together on the fly in that mess? And the reality is there has to be a framework in place that looks at what ifs when you're putting on a festival. What ifs? And you need to look at it, contingency plan for what ifs. So
we don't like to talk about what ifs, but that is, I mean, that's our universe. That's what we deal with each and every day. So let's talk about the project, because I still feel extremely honored that you asked for my expertise and that you're having me contribute my piece to this project. But it's your baby, so why don't you talk about the project that's coming out and your goals and objectives for
let's talk about it. So anyway, when I first started this thing, I looked at it from a tactical standpoint. It was right around when the Mumbai terror raid in Mumbai, India occurred. And I started looking at it tactically. And as I was coming up, I started looking at it operationally between fire and police in the late teens. And then a few years ago, I started looking at this is an operational issue at a community level. And so I go, there's 4 fundamental things that are going on in all our communities. And we have to have, there's leadership, right? There's operational stuff going on. There's a tactical piece to this, and there's a training management piece. Those 4 pieces. And those 4 pieces, I go, we need a doctrine that we can live by. So what I set out to do is to construct a doctrine in which we could create a framework in which the community could work. So there's a term ASHER, active shooter hostile event response. So I said, I'm going to call this ASHER doctrine, and I'm writing a manual on ASHER doctrine. And from that, we're going to take Mission Command, which is it's a leadership tool. It's where you're mission oriented. I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of this, but what I will tell you is that we're looking at it from a prevention. It starts with prevention, and it starts with prevention at all levels. And whether you're a house of worship, whether you're a school, and a house of worship do pretty good on prevention because they they have internal counseling going on all the time, right? Most of them do. So, but schools, hospitals, entertainment venues, stadiums, wherever it is, we're all going to come in. We're all going to figure out a way we operate as far as that. And we're going to start from prevention, and we'll work our way to response. And they're going to meet. They're going to meet here, and they're going to be intermeshed. And so that's the project. And we have those 4 parts: the leadership part, the operational, the tactical, and the training management. And with all those parts, we figured all the how the community works together. And so that's the big picture. And one of the hardest chapter, but the best chapter I felt was the framework for those community sites that we deem to be high valued areas, like our schools, our hospitals, our houses of worship, and things of that, and where our kids go to play, entertainment places. All those places, those are the places and it could be any other place that we deem to be high value. And I wrote a chapter on that, and it really meshes well with your chapter that you're writing on the resiliency piece of this. And so what it does is it takes them and says, hey, this is what you need to do and we start with resiliency. We start with counseling, because that's where it all begins. It begins with everyday life, how we deal with trauma, and how we deal with challenges in our life. Because really, most of these guys that end up being perpetrators were victims at some point. And I know we don't like to look at that, and we know it's not, but somewhere, somehow, someone failed them, or they failed themselves. There's something, is there a level of evil that's out there that's born evil, and I don't know, but there are people that gravitate that way, but those are rare. Those are rare occurrences, I believe. Those are rare. So most people get to where they're going with a lot of help.
Right. Yes. So I am extraordinarily excited about this, because I've got to put together a framework for the resiliency piece that is modular, replicatable, really simple to teach, really simple to access, and people can adapt it to the age of their students. People can adapt it to the environment that they're in. It's just really, really simplistically addresses the most important issues. And again, it's one of those things where the framework is what's important. It's not exactly how you teach it, or using this worksheet, or saying it this way. It's literally that if you address all of these things thoroughly, you're going to get, again, the best possible outcomes in the worst possible scenarios. So it was really exciting to me to be able to take that framework and to put it into the broader picture, which has always been a goal of mine. But I was just intending to write the book individually of just the resilience framework parts, right? So that would just be a standalone, but you allowed me the opportunity to incorporate it into the bigger picture and to be an integral part of moving forward. What are the pieces that are important, and that you valued it enough to include me in that project. It's just, it's awesome, and it's extraordinary, and I can't wait to do my framework trainings and to be able to pass the textbook, right? The tactical strategy book on when I'm doing the trainings on just that resilience piece, because they need the whole picture. They need the whole piece. And people are really willing to look at it parts and pieces. They're often willing to do a weekend training on one part of it, but then they're missing the rest. Right. So to be able to bring the whole puzzle together and go, well, you might not have time for it right now, but I really want to expose you to this. I really want you to see the entire framework. Just read this. and then move forward with it as you have the capacity and the ability and the funding to move into the next pieces. And maybe the more we get it out there, the more it will become just a single framework that makes it easier for everyone to come together in times of crisis. I mean, crisis management has a system, right? FEMA has systems. Anytime that you're in an incident where there is a proper leadership base, which doesn't always happen, right? There's a structure and a system and a hierarchy and who looks to who and who does what, right? But we don't have that yet here. And that's oftentimes why we have parents suing other parents for getting in the way of an ambulance and a child dying, right? That's we end up with these messy results that we could have predicted because there's no order and there's no structure and there's no leadership. And that's not my place. That's where you shine. So
well, it's really, if you look at it, the chapter, the one chapter is chapter 5, and it's, believe it or not, it's called facility template. It is the facility template. And the facility template is huge in its parameters that it's covering. And yours is a huge piece of it. And that's the piece that starts with that. And then, so basically I kind of cover in a one over the world, because I don't know much about counseling and stuff, other than telling soldiers they did wrong. But so you have that piece, and then I take your chapter and I put it trailed behind that other chapter to show, hey, go to this chapter for the details of how to implement that plan. And so that's, and those two chapters construct a huge portion of the manual. It's huge. So it's not the facility, the folks that are actually the people on the ground where it's actually taking place, the people that actually live in day to day, they take the vast majority of space in this manual. So they need to understand this is not a police manual. This is not a fire manual. This is not an emergency responder manual. This is not this is basically a community manual that's going to show us a framework that we can operate in. Doesn't tell you exactly how to do the job. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself in the end.
Yes.
You're going to have to decide what you want to take, what advice you merit or that has merit to you and what doesn't. And then you can, and it'll spawn them to think about it, and maybe they come up with their own ideas. But doing nothing is not a choice. So whether or not you take it all, some of it, that's what it's there for. It's there for you to pick and use as you see fit to construct your facilities, basically to make it a safe area, make it a safe community. And that's the bottom line.
Right. And it's really nice to have something coming out that's for normal people, right? Administrators are normal people. They have the best interest of their schools at heart, but they don't understand strategy and tactics and they don't understand psychology. They don't understand the risks and the signs, and they don't have time to learn all that stuff, right? They have to use outside resources. They have to get that information from someone else. And really, this problem has been approached from a very, let's talk to law enforcement, let's talk to the police department, or let's talk to the emergency services department. Let's have all of the people that are going to respond to it know what's going on. But it's not very common to address normal people in a way they understand, in language they can understand, with real world applicable tools that they can implement simply. Right? We want to talk about of course, there will be this in the book, I'm sure, and I haven't even read it in its entirety yet. But everybody wants to talk about the mechanical stuff. Let's get this scanner and this sensor and this thing, because people can understand the value of that. They understand what that does and how that
It's
helps.
an iPhone. It's an iWatch, you know.
Yeah. So they feel like they're doing something.
Yeah.
They feel like they're doing something effective that's going to impact the outcome.
Well, one of the things you just said is understand. And so that's one of the key pieces is shared understanding. And that's a concept of leadership. And so when we have shared understanding, we now can build mutual trust. We can work together, and we can and so shared understanding. I know what you're doing. If I'm the administrator, school administrator, I might not know how police do this, but I know the concept of what they're trying to do when they come in.
Right.
That means I have the ability now to call in the right people to help me build it. Because we're not asking administrators to build anything. What we're trying to do is show them who they need to talk to and who they need to share information with to be able to make a plan that everybody can live with.
Yes.
And so when you have everybody involved in that, when you have the police, fire, when you have everybody involved in it, then now what you have is you have shared understanding, and now we have a plan and we can all know what's going on in it.
We can all work effectively.
Yeah. And so, one of the big things I talk about, and we talk about this, you just spoke about it, was saying, hey, what's the next shiny tool that we have that's going to fix everything? X-ray machine, metal detectors, whatever there's always something around the corner that's going to fix the problem, right? The reality is we just need to work together, have shared understanding, and do things from a logical point of view. Like, okay, so trauma kits. Let's say that the school administrator says, I want to get trauma kits to our teachers and have them in the classroom. Let's say we're going to have kits in the hallway. We're going to get those filled, and we're going to put them in the hallway in a emergency, just like you have a IED or a defibrillator on the wall, right? And so you have a defibrillator on the wall, but the school doesn't manage that defibrillator, do they? Who manages that defibrillator? Who should manage that defibrillator? The fire department, right? Doesn't it need to be maintained? Is it always going to work? 5 years down the road, when it becomes part of the scenery,
everybody's forgotten about it.
Is it going to work when someone has a heart attack? And the answer is maybe not. Okay, so when equipment falls to the wayside and is out of service, how do you rotate that? How do you rotate? And that's one of the things administrators should be creating plans to bring in. That what they should be doing is getting together with fire and police and figuring out how do we outfit and how do we all live within, and how do we work and have these things replaced. And the answer is probably fire being in charge of outfitting everyone and being the central location that this stuff is issued out and can be rotated in a proper fashion, and we're all using the same type of equipment. So those are some of the things that I talk about in the manual, is that you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to. Teachers should be worrying about teaching, right? Administrators should be worrying about administrating. We're going to connect you in the framework that we're building. We're going to connect you with who you need to speak to about these things and who's going to help you to do these things and how you guys can help each other. So that's kind of what the manual is about.
And for those of you guys that don't know, he's talking about Battle to Be has been providing these trauma kits for first responders, for police officers, and for teachers. And we often tell parents that they should have them with them for something that happens in a public space, right? We're seeing knife attacks, and we're seeing active shooter events in parking lots at grocery stores. So if you, as a parent, or even as just an individual, if you haven't had a Stop the Bleed class and you do not have a traumatic injury kit in your vehicle, you probably have a first aid kit with some Band-Aids in it and some gauze wrap. That's not going to save your life, right? These kits have tourniquets, they have bleed stop, they have the things that you're going to need if there is a bullet wound or a knife wound that needs to be addressed. And they are the difference oftentimes between someone surviving and someone not surviving. 4 minutes can be the difference. Like 30 seconds could be the difference, right? So these trauma kits, every classroom should have a trauma kit. Every teacher should know stop the bleed, right? And we advocate for kindergartners being taught first aid and stop the bleed. Why? Because they're capable. It's not scaring them, it's empowering them to know that they have the skills to survive and to make decisions in situations when adults may not be there to lead them. Because a classroom of 25 kids with one teacher, who's going to guarantee that that teacher is not going to go down? What are you going to do if the teacher goes down and those kids don't know how to respond? Those kids don't have the skills and the rehearsal and the knowledge to respond to this incident. You have 25 5-year-olds running around with no leadership. They have to be capable of being their own leadership. How do we create that environment of survival? We teach them how to survive. And that's what this is about, is empowerment, not fear. I just stopped you completely. Like you just went silent.
Oh, no, I was listening to you. I was talking so much, but I know, and I think when we first talked about this, I knew it was going to be a good match because we talk about the same stuff. We really do. And so I think when I read your chapter, I just loved it, and I shared it with my wife, and I can tell you right now that it's going to mesh so well into the manual. We're at right now at word count, counting everything. Well, not everything, not even this, not counting graphics. We have a lot of graphics. We're at like 97,000 words in this, and it's gonna be big,
comprehensive.
So it's very comprehensive. So it's a big manual. It's a lot of and when someone picks up this manual and they look at it, don't get overwhelmed. You don't have to read the whole thing. You look at it and you go to the place that makes sense, that's going to help you. And that's what it's made for. It's made for everybody. So therefore, there's going to be information in there that you don't need to even read about. If you're interested in it, God bless you, read it. But when you look at it and you go to a part, you're going to say, okay, this is for me. And you read it, and you're going to get what you need out of it. That's what it's for. And it talks to everyone. So
right. It's cohesive, comprehensive, modular, repeatable, standalone, which means you can take any parts and pieces and apply them in your real world and apply them in your situation. And it's going to benefit you just applying that one piece. You are going to make gains for every single piece you apply, and it will eventually become exponential. If you can actually integrate the whole system into your universe, it will be exponentially valuable. But every piece is standalone. Every piece has its own value. And he's put together an incredible team of experts to make sure that what is being put out is accessible, is readable, is not overwhelming, and that it's authentic to people who have experienced these things and made these observations. This is not guesswork. This is being there, observing the aftermath, looking at it and going, oh, how could we have done that better? What mistakes did we make? What resources weren't present that needed to be present? What people weren't involved that needed to be involved? How far back do we need to go to solve this problem? Like, these conversations have been happening for a long time. So definitely reach out if you have questions, if you want to connect with us. Scott, do you want to tell them like when they can expect this to be out and where they can access the information?
So the publisher is Routledge Publishing. They're with Taylor and Francis Group. It's a big publishing firm. It will. I owe them a transcript in mid-January, and then it'll go through a editing process, and it should be publishing in mid-summer of 2025. And so that's when it'll be out. And yes, and you'll be able to get it on anywhere you want to go. You can go to Routledge site, you can go to Amazon, you could, and it'll be on there. It'll be sold worldwide. But it is going to be a significant manual. It's going to help everyone, and I think that hopefully it helps those facilities out there. That's what we really want to do. We're really targeting the community at large, and where we mass people, schools, hospitals, houses of worship. And they all that is what we're really targeting, because I think from there, these things can happen anywhere. They happen in small places, they happen in workplace, but this model can be used by any institution.
Absolutely. So before we close for the day, is there any words of wisdom or quotes that you love, or any last words that you'd like to leave with our audience?
Yeah, I think, oh gosh, there's one quote I really like. So it's let me try to find it. Okay.
I love putting people on the spot.
So anyway, I'm sorry.
No worries. This is the fun stuff.
Oh, so you ready for?
We are actually recording this right before Thanksgiving. So we're literally, what is it, Wednesday? So Thanksgiving is tomorrow. So everybody is in a like vacation mode and brain chilled out mode, and like not really in the most effective work environment at the moment. So I've done 3 of these recordings in the past 2 days, and it's been super awesome to see the difference when people are in their relaxed state and in a more like family oriented mindset than when they're just getting off work or in that like super high stress state that I usually talk to people in. So we get to be a little more relaxed and a little more casual today.
So here's one of my favorite quotes. This is General George Patton, and a good plan violently executed now is better than a perfect plan executed next week. So that's one of my favorite quotes.
I am not at all surprised that you would pick a Patton quote.
So
we are 2 sides of a very different coin, right? Like, I'm the softer side. I'm the softer side of strategy and tactics, and he is all go in, get it done.
So anyway, I'll be reaching out. I think you're very busy from here on out for the rest of the year, I'm sure. So I'll probably be talking to you after the new year, right?
Yeah. So Thank you so much for being with us today. I can't wait to get this out into the hands it needs to get into. And you have an amazing Thanksgiving.
Thank you. You too.
So that will be coming out next year. And if you know anything about the publishing world, I would say safely expect it sometime before September, which is about perfect. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that in January, we will be doing a masterclass on how to build those trauma kits. So if you are completely unfamiliar as a parent, or who's listening to this and going, oh, I'd really like that resource. If you want to build your own kits at home, there are kits available. You can go to Stop the Bleed and purchase a kit. But if you want to create your own, we will do a masterclass to show you what you need to have in it, what things to watch out for to make sure that you're getting good quality items, because not all items are equal. And especially tourniquets and bleed stop, you want to make sure that you're actually getting accurate, authentic items that are going to work effectively when the time comes. So in January, we will be having a free masterclass on how to build those trauma kits. We will be doing fundraisers for our local classroom kits so that we can make sure that all of our local schools are actually provided with these kits, because nothing is in place for that yet. We already do some of our police departments too, because they have to buy their own. Those are not provided for them. So that will be coming up for you. In December, we're doing another Kid Safe Masterclass. So if you have youngsters and you want to be sure that they are not vulnerable to abduction, sexual assault, and human trafficking, if you want to know the basic ways that as a parent you can help keep your kids safer. We can never guarantee safety, but you can keep your kids safer and at much lower risk. That masterclass will also be provided to you free, sponsored by RISEUP, Phoenix Trauma and Crisis Institute. And we will put out the registration forms for that within the next week or so. So that will be available to you in December. And then we'll do the Trauma Kit Masterclass in January. If you guys have questions or want a training around any of these topics, please message me at battle2b.org. I am always accessible. I'm happy to answer anything that I know. If I don't have the answer, I'll refer you out to people that do. Again, my specialty is on the resilience and the psychological preparation piece of this. So I am not the person to ask how to get your school tactically prepared for an active shooter scenario. I teach families and teachers and organizations how to be psychologically and emotionally, that's also strategic, but how to be prepared on that side of things. So again, you can find me at battle2b.org, BATTLE, the number 2BE.org. You can make donations at that site. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, bridging the gaps for our first responders and our communities for the best possible outcomes in the worst possible moments. So you can also find me at Rise Up Phoenix Trauma and Crisis Institute, where we have tons of different online courses available to you, master classes, and individual one-on-one and group coaching opportunities so that you can develop your empowerment, your skill sets, and your awareness of what's happening out there and how you can best prevent becoming a victim, or you can best overcome having become a victim. So I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Rise Up Voices from the Frontline. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I am an absolute open book and happy to communicate with any of you guys that are struggling with any of these topics that we talk about. Have an amazing holiday, and I can't wait to see you next week.